Oh, I won't ever be the same ever since I heard my princess's name. And it seems it's just so far away when her heart by the dawn of the third day. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another brand new off the presses episode of Every Which Way. It's hope you don't mind my singing. I'm actually in really good spirits, and okay, so listen, I need to tell you. So today I'm not going to tell you about my week because nothing really exciting happened. But today I'm recording this. It's on a Sunday, the Sunday night before I post the video, not the video, the episode. But today I had a tarot/oracle card play at Sacred Moon Circle Apothecary here in Hanover, and only 3 of us showed up. It was just Jen, Jody, and myself, and it was actually really nice it being the 3 of us. I feel like we needed it, and I got some things off of my chest that I needed, and I feel lighter. I do. And after I'm finished recording this episode, I'm going to do a little ritual for myself, because I haven't done a little ritual for some time, and I really want to. So I think I'll be doing that. And I'm ready for it. So yeah, I was kind of as I was setting up to start recording, I was singing. I was actually singing a little bit of Broadway, a little bit of Hadestown, which I absolutely love, and a little bit of Dear Evan Hansen. And then I just started on a Zelda. A Zelda song not from the Legend of Zelda video game series, but based on the series, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. I'm a huge Zelda fan, so yeah. And excuse me, I just burped. So yeah, and I'm feeling really good. I really am. Not that I don't often feel good, but it's a different kind of good, if that makes sense. Damn it. Sorry. I dropped my little vial of clove essential oil on the floor. That was the that you heard. So there's that. Anyway, enough about me. How are you guys doing? How have you been? Have you been treating yourselves well? I hope you have. You be kind to yourself. And I know it's hard, and it is. It really is hard. Me myself, like, being nice to yourself and showing yourself kindness and compassion is harder than showing it to someone else. And I know that I struggle with it often, actually. And I'm confident enough to say that there is someone listening right now who also struggles. And I just want you to know that you are worth every ounce of care. Okay? So please take care of yourself. Not for anyone else. Don't take care of yourself for your parents, for your significant other, for your friends. Take care of yourself for you, because you are worth it. So, I'm a little giddy and kind of off track, you could probably tell. And that's entirely on me, because right now I am drinking tea. I'm not drinking a hot tea. I'm drinking myself a adult mixed beverage. I have some twisted tea, sweet tea whiskey, and some brisk tea. And let me just say that if you've never tried that combination, it is worth it. It really is. So, what are you guys drinking? Have you been drinking plenty of water? Have you been taking care of yourselves? I hope you have. Uh, yeah. Sorry, I'm moving stuff around on my desk. So if you happen to hear me grunt and groan or like drop stuff and clank, that's why. I've got everything situated how I want it now, so we should be good. All right, so what am I talking about today? Well, I am talking about a rune. Yep, I'm still doing the rune series. I haven't forgotten about that, I promise. But I was feeling called to do a rune. So I grabbed my little bag of bone runes. And these are runes that I bought, again, at Sacred Moon Circle Apothecary. Not sponsored. Could be sponsored. Jen, Johnny, if you're listening to this, hit me up. But I got them at Sacred Moon Circle Apothecary, and they are made of bone, ethically sourced. I'm sure I trust them enough to, do that stuff. And I pulled a rune. And the rune I pulled was Nauthiz, spelled Nauthiz, which, if you clicked on this episode, then you probably already know that. But let's get into it. So, what does this rune look like? Well, picture a lowercase t, but the tiny little horizontal line is kind of diagonal. Not kind of, it is diagonal. That's Nauthiz. It's also known as Nauthiz, Naudiz. So this is the 10th rune in the Elder Futhark, and the second rune of the second Et. It follows Hagalaz and comes before Isa. If we can recall, the second Et is Heimdall's Et. And Heimdall is the protector of the deities, guardian of the Bifrost. He is the watcher of the gods. That's what he is. He's also, well, not he, but the Et is sometimes also called Hagal's Et, but there are some scholars who believe that Hagal and Heimdall are actually the same deity. So there is that. I'm just going to refer to it as Heimdall's because that's the one that I see the most often and the one that I've come across the most. Phonetically, Nauthiz is the N in the alphabet, if that kind of makes sense. It comes from Old Norse, but its actual etymology is rooted in the Proto-Germanic word naupes. Yeah. And it roughly translates to need, hardship, necessity, pain, and constraint. I can speak words. So, as speaking again on Heimdall and the Et as a whole, Heimdall is the watchman of the gods, and this translates to him being protective and resilient. And those two themes are very much prominent in his Et. As a whole, the second Et is representative of life's growth and how the situations and circumstances that you encounter throughout your life shape your maturity and your own personal growth. Some correspondences for Nauthiz are as follows. The tree it is most often linked to is the beech tree. The color is black. The number is 10, of course, because it is the 10th in the Elder Futhark. The plant is the bistort, Bistort. I'm so sorry. And the animal that is often associated with Nauthiz is the squirrel. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to go back to when the Elder Futhark were, I don't want to say commonly used, because I feel like that implies that they're no longer used right now in the modern era, but they were more prevalent. This was back when our modern life, our modern conveniences, they weren't really a thing. Back when life was often very much a hard struggle, where you and your partner and any kids that you had, or may not, any kids that you may have had to work day in and day out to just survive. If you, more often than not, you lived in a tiny village, or possibly even had a farm, or maybe a combination of the two. But it was very much a time that not preparing yourself could be the difference between life and death. It was a harsher world than today. Today, if you want strawberries, you can go down to Giant or Walmart or whatever local store and get you a pack. You didn't have the worry of, are we growing enough food for everyone? Do we have enough stores for the upcoming winter? Do we have, are the livestock being taken care of? Is our little quarters, our sleeping quarters, are they patched well enough to protect us from the cold and the elements? It was a time where the slightest hardship, the slightest disaster, not even like a big disaster, but one enough, like say the crops fail for a year, that could very much be the difference between a community thriving and a community dying. And ultimately, Nauthiz represents a hardship that limits one's progress or goals. It's often a harbinger of delays, difficulties, or trying times or situations. And these were very much an everyday thing. Not that I'm saying that nowadays we do not have difficult times. We don't have stuff getting in the way of our goals or our plans, because we do. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that it's evolved. It's different than what it was back when struggle was very much a life thing, where life was balanced precariously on a very thin and unsteady line. I hope that makes sense. I hope that does. But going hand in that, the second et as a whole, while it may while it may represent resilience and the hardships that one can face in life, it also represents triumph over those hardships and working through them. Not always taking the easy way out or just laying down and just taking it, but getting through it, and getting through it with the purpose of bettering yourself, if that makes sense. The main takeaway is that, for Nauthiz specifically, is that you can survive the hardships and the difficulties. And there's always something to be learned, to be gained, or appreciated from all of the failures and disasters and hardships that you encounter. And this was no different for people back like a couple centuries ago. If horrible weather prevented hunters from going out and hunting to provide meat and sustenance for their family and their village, well, maybe they won't have that for a day or two, that meat. But in the meantime, they are able to either repair their weapons or prepare them, get everything ready for when the time to hunt returns again, whenever the weather subsides and it's okay for them to venture out into the world to hunt. I hope that makes sense. Nauthiz is a rune that, when it comes down to it, it asks us to focus on what is needed in our life to survive. The bare minimum. Not what we want, not what we desire, none of our goals or anything like that, but what is the bare minimum that we need to make it through life. So, food in your belly, clothes on your back to protect you from the elements, a place to rest where you would be protected from animals, water to drink so that you're not dehydrated, stuff like that. That's one part of Nauthiz. And the reason I say that is because the other aspect of this rune is asking us to identify our shadow self. And the shadow self is the part of ourselves that we see as dark or bad or negative, and that we try to hide away from the world, maybe even from us, that we try to repress or anything like that. Nauthiz is telling us that that part of ourselves, that shadow, is the part that needs growth and needs to be embraced. When Nauthiz appears, well, I don't want to say when, like every time, because it does have various different meanings, but sometimes when Nauthiz appears, it's asking for you to examine how your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors attract the hardships and difficulties in your life. It's about coming face to face with things that maybe you don't ultimately need in your life. Things that perhaps maybe you want, that you enjoy, but aren't necessary for you to get through the day to day. I hope I'm making sense. Because when we lock away or ignore or hide that part of ourselves, that shadow, it leaves us imbalanced and out of harmony with ourselves and even with the world around us. Unfortunately, we do live in a day and age that getting angry at something or someone is seen as bad and that you shouldn't do that. Or being, I don't know, shallow or narcissistic is not good. And maybe that's a bad example. But where things that we associate negatively with how we come off to society as a whole are kind of pushed down. Like for men, the one of the main things with men is that they need to be the strong, masculine, macho alpha dogs, and that showing emotion is showing weakness. And that's not the case. Not the case at all. On the other coin, with women, it's that we are too emotional. We are too compassionate, or something like that. And these are just generic examples. I'm not trying to single anyone out. But too often in our society, at least here in the United States, it is the common trope, acceptance, whatever have you, that we need to present ourselves as composed, poised, and like we have everything under control. And that's not how humans work. That is not realistic either. Very few of us have our shit together. I can't. How do I want to word this? We feel our feelings. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with getting annoyed or upset or mad whenever someone does something. Maybe it could be something that is not appropriate. Or maybe it's just something that you find is not okay. More often than not, it's, well, maybe you should just try and have a calm, cool, and collected conversation, or just kind of sweep it under the rug. It's not really that big of a deal, but sometimes squashing those emotions and those experiences down ultimately does more harm than good. I'm not saying that you should go out there and have as many awful, horrific experiences as you can. But what I am saying is that even when you do have those awful, horrible things happen to you, there is always I don't want to say a good side to it, but there's always a silver lining. So, and I'm not trying to I'm not saying that, oh, if you were abused in a relationship, well then, hey, at least you survived or something like that. I'm not trying to come off as insensitive or anything like that. But how Jody today phrased it was, you are not a victim, you're a survivor. So even if you go through something horrible as domestic abuse, if you came out of that alive, I'm not saying that you're not unscathed, because goodness knows what that does to a person. It's not great. But it sort of shows you your strength. And I'm not saying that this is the way it is for everyone, because not everyone makes it out of those situations alive. Unfortunately, a lot of people die because of that. And as a result, they're kind of victims. But if you're able to break away, if you're willing to take yourself out of that situation, which can be extremely difficult and frightening, terrifying even. But if you do take yourself out of that situation, then you survived that. And maybe it made you stronger for it. Now, how you cope through the trauma of that entirely depends on you. You could lose yourself in drugs, alcohol, or whatever. Or you could look it in the eye and say, that was a thing that happened to me. And it was awful, but I did not ask to be hurt. I did not ask to be abused. I did not dress a certain way or say a certain thing to warrant that. That's on the other person. Am I making sense? I hope I am. But it's confronting that aspect of yourself that you don't often associate with good emotion, positivity, or that you want the world to see, and kind of merging it into your life. Like being able to talk about it without crying or without feeling like you've just, like your life was ruined because of that. Seeing it and acknowledging it, not shying away from it or bearing it down. That's what Nauthiz, that's part of what Nauthiz says, is trying to say. It could very well, in when you draw Nauthiz in a reading, it could very well be, hey, stick to the basics. You don't need this X, Y, and Z in your life. But it could also mean that you need to do some shadow work, because that is important. And I do apologize if I happened to trigger anyone with what I was talking about. I did go off on a little tangent, but I just want to kind of bring focus on how important it is to not push those feelings so deep down and not feel them, or not live by them, but not acknowledge them, because that's not helpful for anyone. And you want to, well, I would hope that you would want to live life. Pushing them down and not acknowledging them or repressing them is only a life half lived, if that makes sense. Going back to Nauthiz, sorry for the tangent there. When Nauthiz appears in a reading, it can also mean that it's a time to pay old debts and to restore that harmony or balance that may be missing in your life. And by old debts, it's not just like, old money debts or something like that. It could be old debts that you owe to yourself as well. To sum up Nauthiz in 2 phrases, the 2 that I feel are most appropriate are, don't take this world so personally, and when one door closes, another one opens. And that's kind of the gist of it. Even when the crops died, or when the cattle or the livestock were sick or couldn't be eaten, even when back thousands of years, when our species was in its infancy and still being hunted quite aggressively by predators, enough of us survived, made it through those difficult times, and eventually were a stepping stone to where we ended up in this day and age. Even if disasters strike, one of the things about our species is that we always find a way to work through them, to survive. And that is the message that Nauthiz gives, summed up in a nice little package. It is that hardships that come at your doorstep are challenges that are needed for one to grow. And if that means embracing part of yourself that you may not like in order to get to that growth, then that's what needs done. And Nauthiz asks that we take those steps to get through those hard times, to get through those disasters and survive. Because at the end of the day, if you have that roof over your head, that safe place that you can sleep soundly and not have to worry about getting killed by a predator, if you have something to protect you from the elements, like clothing, and if you have food and water, then everything else is just extra. It may be nice to have, but it is not necessary. And that is Nauthiz. And that's kind of all I have. To be honest with you, my notes were only like a page front and back. Everything else was more of a discussion, really. And I hope that you don't mind that I did that. But with this one, I wanted to be more, I guess, not off script, because I don't have a script. I do take notes, but I don't read a script. But to kind of discuss it with you, if that makes any sense. I hope that it does. So, that is Nauthiz. While it may be a harbinger of need, necessity, pain, and constraint, it also is a rune that encourages us to work through that. Because at the end of the day, that is what is needed for us to mature and grow. So yeah, there you go. And I know that some of the things that I talked about were very heavy and very serious. And I don't try to make light of those things at all or anything like that. But I feel like discussing them at times is important, especially when it comes to personal growth and spirituality. I think a lot of our world now likes to shy away from any sort of transparency and vulnerability because it's seen as a weakness. But it's not a weakness, it is a strength. To be open and to talk about the hard things that no one else wants to talk about is sometimes what's needed. And at the end of the day, that kind of perfectly summons Nauthiz. So yeah, I want to thank you very much for joining me today for this episode. Second rune of the show. So this one's a special one. First one was 30 Zaz, and now Nauthiz. So we got 2 down, and we got 20 plus more to go. So, yeah, that's all I have for you. Thank you again for listening to this episode. If you could do me a huge favor, if you could rate and possibly review this episode, this show in general, I would greatly appreciate that. That would help us grow and reach whoever needs to hear the words that I spew from my mouth to them. Didn't make sense, Dana. Nice. So, if you want, I do have an email. It is everywhicwaypodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send me an email, go for it. I haven't gotten one yet, so I'm kind of lonely. I have an Instagram and a TikTok. Both handles are Witch of the Gathering. I also have a Facebook page for this podcast if you'd like to go there. I'm not very active on Facebook on that page. I am actually more active on TikTok and Instagram. So, yeah. I thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a marvelously magical Monday, and you wonderful witches take care of yourselves, because you deserve it. Bye-bye.